Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking pantry organization. Now I think our pantries are a little bit like our closets. They're a frequently used space in our home, and that means they are super easy to get out of order and messed up and just in a shambles. So today I'm sharing my top tips on how to organize your pantry and keep it that way.
On the run from my given disaster, speed away from the holy mind.
Now, getting an organized pantry isn't actually as tough as you might think. I've just spent a couple of hours redoing my entire pantry, and that's why I thought that it was probably a good time to actually create a video and share what I've learnt in this process. It wasn't that long ago that I did a pantry makeover, but I found that it wasn't working particularly well for me, and that's why I wanted to share why that wasn't working well and how you can avoid making the same mistakes that I did.
Feels like I pretend, keep on driving and driving along the roads.
First up, I think it's really important to rethink your space. Now, what I found with the way my pantry had been set up was it just wasn't working really well. It looked great and everything was really nicely ordered, but it didn't suit my lifestyle. And often if we always kind of look for something or look to create something that's aesthetically pleasing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be really functional and practical. So I was always struggling to find enough space in my pantry, but I did have a set of cupboards, these high cupboards here, that were just filled with glassware and coffee cups and coffee plungers and things that I wasn't using very often. Now that cupboard happened to be in a really prime part of my kitchen, and it would have been really handy to have foods in there that I use on a daily basis. So I decided to move those things that I don't use very often to the highest shelf in my pantry so that I could use that really accessible, handy set of cupboards and shelves on a very regular basis. So for that reason, I think it's really important to rethink your space and have a really good look at your kitchen. Are there cupboards and drawers and shelving that's being used to store things that you don't use very often? If that's the case, can you pack them away, put them in a box and put them in the garage or the basement or somewhere else and use that prime real estate for more important things? And that leads me into the next important thing that I think is worth doing before you even hit the pantry and start organizing, and that is to have a plan. But for me, what I like to do is I just simply draw out my shelving space, draw out my pantry. It doesn't have to be anything special, but just to give me an idea of where I'm going to position things. I like to work in sections, and I pretty much like to work a shelf at a time. I do find it super overwhelming taking absolutely everything out of my cupboards and drawers and pantry at once. Besides the fact that I probably don't even have enough space on my countertops to put everything, I just feel quite overwhelmed. So I try and tackle it one little area at a time. I just find it far more manageable. One of the really important lessons I've learned when it comes to organizing your pantry is to leave some spare space. We've all seen those pantries on Pinterest or online where everything is beautifully lined up, but there's no spare space. So I think it's really important to have a shelf that's almost like a dumping ground, and that is for when you come home from the supermarket and you just want to throw things into the pantry without decanting them into your labeled containers and taking so much time. This one may sound really obvious, but I also think that it's really important to use clear containers. I've had storage containers in my pantry that are not clear, and what tends to happen in our home is that whatever is in those containers just tends to go off, not get used, and just be wasted. If you can't see it, you generally don't remember to access it. I went out and purchased some new containers because for me, I quite like to have something new to get me inspired to even tackle such a project. So these new containers are particularly great because they're lightweight. So when you fill them with your products, they're not going to be super heavy, which is always a bit of a pain when you're taking things in and out of your pantry. And also they are stackable, really easily stackable containers. So it means that you can stack things and really utilize your space well. I also like the clear containers too because it means that I don't have to label things. I have labeled containers in the past and I tend to change things around from time to time and change out the containers, and it's a bit of a pain if you have everything labeled. So I prefer these days not to label my containers and just make sure that they are clear. Now if you have other people in your home that are using those containers and accessing the pantry, you may want to make it easy for them to identify what's in each container. So all I do is just cut off some of the labels and pop them inside the container so you can easily see what's inside. If you are buying new containers, be sure to wash them first. You really just want to give them a good wash in warm soapy water and make sure they are clean and dry before you get started. I also find it really handy when you are reorganizing your pantry is to group things together. You might want to group them together in small containers, but I find if everything is grouped together, things are more likely to stay in order and you're more likely to put them back in their place because they have a place, rather than everything just being thrown on one shelf. If you have them ordered in small sections, like here I've used this new plastic crate to organize all of my oils and vinegars, and that just means that these are products that I'm not using all the time, but they're all there in the same spot. So if I'm looking for a particular oil, I can just grab that container out and I know that they will all be there. If they're just all spread out across the shelf, then they tend to just become a big mess and you can't generally see the wood for the trees. If you lead a busy life, it may not be practical for you to decant everything you own and put them into pretty containers. My boys go through loads of breakfast cereal, so it doesn't make sense for me to be continually putting that cereal into other containers. So I think it's really important to just make sure whether you are after something that is aesthetically beautiful or whether you want practicality and a pantry that is really organized and easy to use.
Speed away from the holy mind.
Now when it comes to maintaining your organized pantry, all I do is take a couple of minutes each day just to reorder things, wipe down the shelves, and make sure that everything is in place. Once you have your pantry organized and working well, I think it's a good idea just to spend a minute or two each day keeping it that way. Now it doesn't have to be an arduous task, but for me, I empty the dishwasher in the morning and then I just wipe down the benches that I can see in my pantry, and for me, that just means that I'm keeping on top of it and I keep that order that I have spent so long creating. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.